Hey, welcome back, knife nerds and everyday care people. It's your boy, the Big Canucker here, and I just thought I would go for a little bit of a video here this morning, a kind of a top five, and yeah. So I thought we'd have a look at top five working knives, and these are working knives that I own, that I got pretty much for work, and everybody's working knife is going to be, I think, a little bit different. Now, my particular working knife was a knife that I would use to cut open a lot of packaging, plastic bags, lots of cardboard. I break down a huge amount of cardboard in my job where everything comes in cardboard. So, you know what? I like to cut it up, make sure it's small. And it's fun. It's fun to cut things. You know, if you're a knife guy, you know that you got that knife to cut things, not just to, some people have knives to flick, some people have knives to play with, some people have knives for self-defense, some people have knives for work. I had knives for work and to break down cardboard boxes. I would also cut the occasional stuff like drawer liners, strapping, things like that. Lots of zip ties, I would cut those too as well. So for me, I didn't do very much prying with my knives. That's a huge thing. I know a lot of people like to see a work knife with a really thick blade on it, and not for me. I mean, for me, I liked that kind of high, like a hollow grind maybe, or that high flat-sided grind. Well, that was really good for me because I did lots of cardboard cutting, and edge retention was another good thing for me. Toughness, I guess a little bit, but I mean, I wasn't bashing my knives around. There are people out there who swing their knives and they bash them quite a bit. So toughness would be good for them. Like a 1095 steel where they're not necessarily needing that 100% edge retention. But for me, edge retention was where it's at, and slicing ability. I like lightsabers. So these are in no particular order. They are just knives that I really, really liked using for work. All right, and let's go with the first one. Is the Spyderco K2. This knife here, I loved the look of this knife. And the other thing that I really, really liked about this knife is I liked the fact that it was a CPM 10V steel. And I heard so much about the CPM 10V steel. I guess it's kind of cousin to the CPM, the S110V. So if you're familiar with the S110V, this is very similar, but there is not the stainlessness of the CPM S110V, but there is the crazy amount of edge retention. Now, to get, I think, the maximum benefit of the edge retention of this knife, you want to be hardened to about 67 HRC, Rockwell. This one here is the Spyderco's version is right around 63. So I think what they end up doing is they don't go to the absolute maximum, the 67 to 69, because a knife still has to be tough. They don't want the edge chipping, and you're still going to get some wonderful, wonderful edge retention. Now, I know that this knife in a custom maker did a CPM 10V steel blade, and he cut 5/8 manila rope 2,400 times before the edge was degraded. And that is amazing. 2,400 times. I know that Pete from Cedric and Ada Gear Channel down in Australia, he did some cutting, and CPM 10V was, I do believe, is number 2 behind Maximate. It was number 1 for the longest time, and then Maximate came, and then Rex 121. So you got some real crazy steels that are even almost on the borderline ceramic have overtaken the S1 or taken the 10V, but 10V was the champ for a long, long time. So 10V. Now this particular one here, Spyderco K2, I've had a little bit custom built because I do not like tip down carry. I really, really like to tip up carry. So I had the boys out at East End Iron and Tabor. Spencer, he milled that out for me. So I've got the same spoon clip. I've just been able to have a tip up. And the other thing I did is, I'm not sure if you can tell, is I put a patina on here. And I just really, really like the patina. And you can't tell, you can see the patina here, but what you can't tell is it's almost got like a purple hue to it in certain areas and a yellow hue to it. It's kind of a multifaceted patina. And of course, you've got the reuse integral lock and titanium frame. It is a frame, it is a lock stick nightmare. but I pulled this knife apart not too long ago, and I sprayed the end here with what did I spray it with? I sprayed it with a graphite spray and the lock face, and that seems to have done it. I mean, I've flicked this knife open a bunch of times, and it seems like it's working a lot better than what I did before. So hopefully that is something that'll last at least a couple of weeks, because the lock stick on this can be terrible and it drives me crazy. All right, now another big knife. It is the Manix 2 XL. Now the Manix is a S30V, so I mean it's got really good edge retention, but it's got that flat ground large blade. Now this Spyderco K2 is running about 4 inches, and this is about 3.75. It's not quite 4, but it's still a nice big blade. Fits my hands really well. I don't worry a whole lot about weight when I'm looking for a work knife. I know, of course, I don't want something so heavy that's going to give me like saggy pants, or that's going to be really crazy noticeable. But I mean, you're up around 5 ounces, 6 ounces max. It's not going to really, that's about the maximum that I'd go to with a working knife. And I really like the fact that this has got the high blade. It's got really comfortable. It's got some great jimping on it. And it is also a fun knife to flick. G10 with the milled out liners. Another really nice thing about this knife is it's got right see-through liners. There's no backspacer in there, so if I need to clean this out and spray it down, it will. It'll clean up really easily. And the one thing that this didn't have that I did a little bit of a custom to is I actually put a sharpening choil in it. So you can see right here. There's been a few knives that I've done that to, and it just saves them from recurving, and it's just really easy to sharpen. That's the one knock I have on Spyderco, is I wish they did a little bit more sharpening choils. So, I mean, it's not that hard for me to do it. I just take a round file, I would a spring diamond file, and it's really a nice, easy job. Okay, so the next knife that I have is, not only is it a working knife, it's also a really kind of a gentleman's knife too as well. And this is the Gale Bradley II. It is a liner lock with a CPM M4 steel. And M4 is another great steel with toughness and edge retention. And this one here has kind of a high hollow grind. So it's going to be a good slicer too, but it also is a fairly thick enough blade that you're not too worried about this kind of snapping in half if you had to do some real heavy cutting, especially some zip ties. They're able to get in there and cut. And the M4 cuts like a demon for a long time. And Gale Bradley knows how to make a working man's knife. Now the little bit of a difference that I did with this one is I actually I ground this area out here just a little bit, because they had these two sides flat, and they expected the meat of your thumb to get in there and close it. I just wanted something a little bit easier to access, especially if I had gloves on. And I was able to grind it down a little bit here with a Dremel, and it's able to go at the axe. I'm able to get at the liner lock a lot better. And I also did put a little bit of a sharpening choil on this one too as well. And all my working knives have got really good KME edges on them too as well. And I like to sharpen them to around 17 degrees or so. To me, because I like slicing things so much, I like to, 15 degrees down, get in that area as you're starting to get a little bit maybe chippy on edges that, they can roll. Where 17 degrees gives me the cutting that I like, but it also still has some nice edge stability. And I always seem to go with the kind of a 17 degree edge with a little bit of a back bevel of, not a back bevel, but a 20 degree secondary bevel on the end. Just, I sharpen it to 15, or sorry, to 17, and then I put a little bit of a 20 degree bevel on there just at the very edge, just to give that edge some stability. And not only is this knife a really good working man's knife, it's also kind of a classy knife too as well, with the laminate carbon fiber, which a lot of people drives them crazy, but to me it doesn't. I think it still looks really good. It feels really good. It's got some great texture. I'm okay with the laminate carbon fiber. Okay, so the next one here is, this is the big daddy of EDC, which is the Paramilitary 2. So another really great working knife. Now, this edge or this tip can be considered maybe a little too fine or delicate for some as a working man's knife. But I mean, I have make it a hard and fast rule not to pry with my knives. Now, especially if I'm at work, I'm 99.99% of the time I'm carrying a Leatherman Wave or I'm carrying a Victorinox Spirit X, and I've got a hard screwdriver in there that I could use for prying. And it makes my teeth hurt when I think of people prying with the fine tip of something like this. So this is going to cut anything you want to cut for a long time. S30V steel, really, really great handle. And I mean, this is one of the knives. When I first started collecting knives and I looked at Spyderco knives, I thought, man, that looks kind of goofy. You know, the hole in it, I thought, that hump on it a little bit. And the fact that the handles were so big compared to the blade. I mean, I like things very symmetrical. I like things so symmetrical. I don't even go to casinos because the slot machines piss me off because they only have one arm. So that's how much I like things that are symmetrical. And this looked like it was kind of goofy, but you know, Sal, designing this, and Eric, they designed it to work in your hand as a working knife. They designed from the hand out, and I think looks were secondary. And because it is an odd looking knife right off the bat, but it really, really fits well in your hand. The S30V steel is a great cutlery steel. It is the steel that was designed for the cutlery industry. I mean, if we go back, 10, 15 years, when you had D2 steel was coming around, as that was a big thing, 440C, 440HC, those were all the really good steels. I mean, Buck and their 440HC, their high carbon Paul Boss heated steel. I mean, that was the pinnacle of knife making for a long time. And then somebody said, well, let's make a steel that will do everything really well. Stainlessness, great edge retention, easy to sharpen, toughness is there, and S30V was it. So, I mean, with everybody with the M390s and the Maximum steels and the crazy steels, you can never go wrong with an S30V steel. I don't care who you are. If you have a knife with S30V steel, you've got a good knife. All right. So this one here also, I did put a sharpening choil in it too as well, and I did some purple Rit dye on this too as well. And of course, most of my knives and all my working knives have got to have that leather lanyard on there. Thank you very much, Randy Johnson, for showing me how to tie that. Okay, and then of course, I bought this knife specifically to go to work with. It is the Endura and the ZDP 189 with the British Racing Green. It is a backlock. It is the knife that I think if you had to have one working knife out of all these, if these all went away, this is the knife that I would choose as just a straight working knife. Now, again, your tip is a little fine on this, but this thing cuts like a demon and it cuts forever. This FRN handling, fiber reinforced nylon with a bidirectional pattern on it is great grip, wet or dry. It's comfortable in the hand. There's not very many hot spots on here. You've got good jimping on here with this ramp. You've got a back lock that you never can go wrong with because they're extremely strong. And it carries really, really light with the FRN handles because it does have this doesn't really have the any sort of steel liners in it. Like, not that you need it, because this is an extremely light knife for the big size. I mean, this is just about a 4-inch blade. It is a total flat ground with an absolutely wicked slicing ZDP 189. And you're not afraid that they're not afraid to beat the hell out of this knife. I mean, it's the reason I think that I would have this so much as kind of a working knife is because if I scratch the heck out of the blade, it doesn't bother me. If the FRN handle gets chipped or scraped, it doesn't bother me. It's a working knife. Yeah, so this is what I would use. Now I put a little bit of a sharpening choil in here too as well. and I just went with a little bit of a triangular one just to try to mix it up a little bit. And as you can see, I've got that edge on there, and that's the one thing I like about ZDP 189 too as well, is it holds an edge for a long time. So you've got Spyderco, you've got the S, not the S110, but you've got the 10V here, and you've got the M4, and I would say that your ZDP 189 is just below your 10V, a little bit better than your M4. It's the ZDP 189 is a steel that's made in Japan by Hitachi, and it is a great cutting tool, and it's up there with the 10V, the S110V. Not quite max mint, because that max mint and that Rex 121, I do believe, they're like a ceramic. They're a crazy hybrid steel that I wouldn't even, almost sometimes wouldn't even call that stuff steel. But all right, so not number one, but the last one I have is the Spyderco Endura. Now, if I'd like to hear your top 5 working men knives. I know that you'll have different criteria, and there'll be different knives, and I do appreciate it. You guys give me the heads up on your top 5. So if you like what you saw, please give me a thumbs up and the subscribe. It's really still dangerous out there, out in the world. So please stay safe and listen to the experts. Keep your shiny side up, your stick on the ice. This is the Big Canucker saying adios.